Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection down in Southern California with Dr. Stephanie Libs. Stephanie, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and reflecting on that moment in life when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor, what was going on in your life, and what attracted you to this profession?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, happy to. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So my name is Dr. Stephanie Libs. I am a chiropractor. I specialize in pediatrics and pregnancy. I'm also a lactation consultant, so I can talk a little bit about that and how I integrate that into my practice to help lots of breastfeeding moms and babies. So I have a practice here in San Diego. It's called Cafe of Life. We're a very open membership style practice. We have a big open room with 4 tables. We're a team of 4 chiropractors. So we all work together. We work as a group. We see all the same patients. It's a very communal, very open environment. My midwife opened a birth center right next door. So we literally share a wall where babies are born. So we do a lot of adjusting moms in labor. We see babies right at birth. So it's a lot of fun. I have so much fun in practice and I love what I do. I just hit my 10-year anniversary in practice, which feels like such a big thing. And I feel so much more like fired up today than I did 10 years ago. And anytime I heard chiropractors say that, I was like, they're lying. They're just BSing. Like, no way are they still so excited after 10 years. But I truly am. And I'm always trying to learn more and just dig deeper into the nervous system and chiropractic and how to serve people better and bigger. So I love it. So I decided to become a chiropractor when I was 18 or 19. I had always gone to a chiropractor from the time I was a kid. My parents always went. They had back pain and neck issues, and so they would go to a chiropractor occasionally. I would usually tag along, and I was like, I feel like I should do this. And I was about 12 or 13 when I asked if I could get adjusted for the first time. And I was a competitive cheerleader, so I was doing lots of like flips and tumbling and throwing other girls up in the air and, getting hurt and all the sort of things. And so I had back pain, I had headaches, and I remember asking the chiropractor, how often should I be getting headaches? Like, what's normal? And he was like, none. I was like, oh, all right. Well, so then how often should I come in and get adjusted? And he was like, just regularly. He was very vague. I was like, all right, I guess I'll come preventatively. I don't know what that looks like, but I'll figure it out. So getting adjusted always helped my pain go away. And I was like, great, chiropractic is awesome. And then I was just out of high school and I was working at a tanning salon because that's what you do when you're 18. And this guy came in and I saw on his account, he was a doctor. And I was like, just chatting, what kind of doctor are you? He said he was a chiropractor. And I was like, I love chiropractic. It helps so much. It helps with my back pain and my headaches. And he was like, great. And we just chatted. And he's like, what are you doing with your life? I was like, I don't know. I'm just working here at a tanning salon, trying to pay my bills and pay for my car payment, whatever. And he was like, well, if you want to do something bigger with your life, I'm looking to hire an assistant. So why don't you stop by the office? So I went to his office, got the job, worked his front desk for a while, and it completely changed my life. So I went from getting adjusted just as needed, like for pain, to getting adjusted regularly, whether I was in pain or not. And my whole life changed. So I was constantly a sick kid. I was always on antibiotics. I was always getting sick, always getting headaches and back pain as well. All of that went away when I was adjusted regularly. And I haven't been on antibiotics since. I, haven't needed medication since. My whole way of eating changed. My whole philosophy on life and health and food changed. So it really made a big impact in my life. And I was like, this is a cool job. I'll work this job forever. And then another chiropractor came in. His name is Peter Seguino. He actually practices just down the street from me, and I love and adore him. He came in because those 2 guys were going to go have lunch. And we just got to chatting. And he said, well, what are you doing with your life? Another, what are you doing with your life question. And I was like, I'm just working here, and I think I'm going to go to massage school, and I'll do massage here in the office, and like, that'll be great. He was like, why not chiropractic? And I was like, I couldn't do that. Like, I can't do what he does. This chiropractic thing is hard, and like, you have to be really smart, and I'm not smart enough, and I don't have enough money for school, and all these limiting beliefs of why I couldn't do it. It never even occurred to me that I could until he asked the question. And I don't remember if it was like that night or the next day. It was like a light bulb. It was like I was struck by lightning. Like, I'm meant to be a chiropractor. I was put on this earth to be a chiropractor. And that is what did it for me. It was just the idea that he put in my head of course it's possible. If I can do it, you can do it. And he was like, sure, go to massage school, but you're helping one person in an hour as opposed to chiropractic. Think of how many more people you can help in an hour. And I was like, oh, this is what I meant to do with my life. And I never looked back. I got back into school, went through my undergrad, did all the courses. I went to Life West with you, and I never looked back. And it just solidified it for me that this was what I was meant to do. And then when I was in chiropractic school, I had some really great mentors. We shared some really great mentors. And I knew that pediatrics and pregnancy was the route that I wanted to take to really, really deeply specialize in that.
All right, so I'm going to interrupt you right there. So like,
Yeah.
when you got to school, it seemed to me as though you almost had some momentum coming into
Mhm.
school. Like, I remember you coming up to me in Sid Square your first quarter and was like, I heard you're the MLS representative. Like, when is that happening? How do I sign up? And I was just
Right.
like, who are you? When did you get here? You're like, I just got here like this week. I'm ready though.
Ready, let's do it.
When is it happening? And just if you could kind of tease apart some of the details of like when you decide you want to go to chiropractic school leading up to you actually starting chiropractic school, like what was that time like? Because it's not, you kind of abbreviated it by just saying I went back to school and I got my prereqs done and I didn't look back, but like there was obviously a lot going on at that time of like you preparing for chiropractic school, and a lot of this podcast and conversation is focused on like what you can do, knowing what you know now. Like, what would you have your younger version of yourself be doing to prepare yourself so you could hit the ground running, especially knowing now that you really found this passion and this pathway of pediatric and prenatal care? Like, what can somebody do to focus their efforts leading up?
I love it. Okay, so I love when people ask me like, what would you do differently? And honestly, I would not do anything differently. I loved my path, and so I'll talk about what I did do and what I feel worked for me to get that momentum, because I do feel like I had a little bit of a leg up starting chiropractic college coming from working in a chiropractic office. So I knew how to run an office. I knew how to communicate with patients. I had a lot of that experience. So that certainly helped. But for someone that might not have that, it's totally fine. But what I did is I talked to a lot of chiropractors, a lot. So anytime there was like a conference that the doctor I was working for was going to, I would go to. I would often like volunteer to work the door and check people in. And I would ask everybody just questions. What chiropractic college would you recommend? Where did you go to chiropractic college? What do you think I should do? What should I start with? I went to one of the monthly chiropractic meetups that was here in San Diego, and Reggie Gold was one of the speakers. And he has since passed away, but he is such a true chiropractic philosopher. And he really made a big impact on my life. And I'm so blessed to have known him personally. But he was one, like anytime I would see a speaker, I would always go up to them after and thank them for speaking and ask them questions. Hey, I'm going to chiropractic school. Any advice? What would you recommend? So I feel like I got a huge influence. And I remember asking Reggie, what do you recommend for chiropractic school? Like, what should I do? And he was selling a bunch of CDs. CDs were the thing at the time of like audio. And he goes, here, you need this. And he hands me this, like, you know, those like CD books back in the day, right? So he hands me a fat one of those and he goes, here, have this. And I was like, okay, well, let me pay you. It was like $200 for this. And I was like, so much money to me at the time. Let me pay you for this. Oh my gosh. He's like, no, you need to have this, listen to it, and then go to chiropractic school. And I was like, ah. And that was the first like really generous thing that another chiropractor had done for me. And I will never, ever forget it. And it really ingrained in me, like, chiropractic is a profession full of really, really generous people who just wants each other to succeed. And so that really stuck with me, but like, so I got this influx of advice from so many different chiropractors practicing all sorts of styles, all sorts of techniques. And that's what I did. And I feel like I got into chiropractic school knowing, like, let's do this. I'm not going to waste my time. And I also come from a very, very humble upbringing. My parents do not have a lot of money. My dad passed away last year, and, we were like partially homeless for a time. I say partially because my parents split time. So when we were with my dad, we were kind of on the street a little bit. And so to me, chiropractic school was such a big investment. It was an amount of money that I could not even fathom. I could not even see what several $100,000 ever looked like. And so I went into it knowing I'm not going to waste my time here. I'm going to soak up every ounce of this that I can. And I remember we had a teacher who would, it was our last quarter, and he would end class early. I got mad at him. I was like, I'm paying for this time. You're about to teach business. We're about to go into this world. Give me my 2 hours of class time. I don't want class cut early. Give me my time. Teach me some stuff.
That's really funny. So I remember that about you. And yeah, one of the identities that you had to me was that you were a part of a sorority that was kind of like in and out of being active at the school. And I remember you and Jenna really being all about representing it. So can you kind of just touch on the sorority? Because I know now that I'm back at Life West that there is a presence of it, and maybe you could just share like how impactful that was to be involved in it, and maybe just a little bit overview and background on the group, just so that we can create some context for any women that might be interested and are going to school.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the sorority was a huge piece of my chiropractic journey. It still is. Some of my best friends are chiropractors. Like you mentioned, Jenna Watson Evans. She's now in Australia with her chiropractic husband, running a great practice down there. She is one of my best friends. We were in each other's weddings. We raise our kids together. They come stay with us. We stay with them when we visit. And so we went through the sorority together. And some people might have, like, I was never in an undergrad sorority, so it's completely different. We had a whole process to get initiated, and it's all about studying chiropractic philosophy, being really dedicated to your classes, being really involved on campus. And it was a really great learning experience because it really like pushed us to become I don't say greater version of ourselves, but like pushed us to our potential, and I was able to we had all these activities that we did. And, I think the quarter that I pledged to get into the sorority was my best academic quarter. And I'm not like a huge academic person, clinical is where I thrive. Academics, not my strong suit, but it was my best academic quarter. And it really rooted me in the philosophy of chiropractic. And that's something that I talk about all the time to other chiropractors is you've got to be rooted in our philosophy because, what makes us different as a profession is our philosophy. You know this, Ben. I know we've had so many discussions on this, right? Like chiropractic is first and foremost a philosophy of of the innate intelligence within the body, which coordinates and controls every action in the body and allows us to heal. And so really getting rooted in the writings of the green books, which the founders wrote so long ago, but still a lot of the principles in them ring true today. I think it's really important to be a successful chiropractor. And one of the things that I think is so important is to like continually study that. So getting in the sorority was really my like deep dive into the philosophy and really getting rooted. And then I've continued that. So I have a monthly meetup now for chiropractors. We study philosophy. We talk about how to integrate it into practice, how to communicate with our patients so that we can serve better, right? That's really the goal, is we can serve more people in a better way, in a more effective way, and really spread the message of chiropractic to the masses, which everybody will benefit from that.
Can you kind of touch and tease apart like what that group was, like what the inspiration behind that group was, and then who have you attracted?
Yeah.
What is kind of the sort of topics that you touch on, or give us some scenarios that you're sort of bouncing off of each other and getting feedback on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we meet every month here in San Diego. So if anybody's in San Diego, you're welcome to come join us. And we've been meeting now for about 8 years. We've been meeting 8 years now. And typically every year we have chosen a green book, which is one of the sort of historical writings in chiropractic. And we kind of like chunk it out into 12 chunks, and then we go over it through each meeting. So it's evolved a little bit. The first year it was a lot of guest speakers. We had a lot of guest speakers who came in and they weren't allowed to sell anything. They had to teach chiropractic philosophy. So that was really how it started. And since then, it's really evolved into more of a roundtable discussion. So we've got a core group of us, maybe 12 or 15 of us now, who meet every month. And then we have other chiros, other docs and students who come, as they want to. And we really just study the philosophy of chiropractic. This year is a little bit different. So we're actually integrating some other books. We're actually reading The Alchemist. I'm sure everybody's read it, but it's a really great, just like spiritual growth kind of story. And so we're actually reading that and then integrating that into the philosophy as well. So it's really helpful because all of us practice differently. A lot of us have different techniques, different demographics, but the principles of chiropractic ring true throughout all of our practices. And so it's just a really great way not only to connect with the philosophy, but also to bond with other chiropractors. And a lot of us refer to each other, right? Like Devin Young is a chiropractor who's in the group. He has a NUCA practice, which is an upper cervical practice in not far from me. He also has decompression tables in his office. So if I have anybody with those types of issues, I send them right to him and he takes great care of them. And it's very collaborative. He'll send me people who are maybe pregnant or have new babies and he doesn't see them. So he'll send them to me. And we do that a lot in our group, which is so cool. And we all really just want each other to be successful. So that's another piece of it too. Like I have my own, money thoughts, especially coming from rather humble beginnings. And I was really nervous to raise my fees last year. And everybody in the group supported me and talked me through it. And they were like, Steph, you have to raise your fees. You charge, there are 2 docs there who are in the first year of practice and they charge more than me. They were like, are you kidding, Steph? You have more experience than us. Raise your fees. You should charge more than we do. And I was like, you guys are right. So, and we did in the practice and nobody batted an eye and it was fine, So those types of things I think are really important to have that support once you're in practice also. And that's stuff that we did in school, right? Like we had a weekly adjusting group. We had weekly philosophy meetings. Like we did all that together and it's important to have that. I just think it's so it's just so grounding, and it keeps you going, keeps you motivated.
Can you tease out like the pediatric and pregnancy pathway, like becoming a pediatric chiropractor, becoming a pregnancy chiropractor, what that looks like, the best resources, the best trainings you did, anything that you're aware of, things that you've created, things that other people have created?
Yes, absolutely. So I always knew I wanted to specialize in pediatrics and pregnancy. It just always felt like that just felt right to me. I also, going to all these chiropractic meetings when I was working in an office and talking to all these docs, all the miracle stories were always babies, right? It was always a baby who couldn't breastfeed or couldn't latch or wasn't breathing properly or was in the NICU or something, got their first adjustment, and then the lights turned on and they healed. And so that always stuck with me, and I knew that that's what I was meant to do. So when I started chiropractic school, another huge mentor of mine was Jeannie Ohm. She's also since passed away. She ran the International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, which is the largest organization in chiropractic. And they put on, in my opinion, the most amazing trainings for pediatrics and pregnancy that's out there. So anytime I meet a student who wants to go into peds and pregnancy, I say, you have to do the ICPA program, no other option. It's always funny when, I'll interview a potential associate and they're like, yeah, I want to do peds and pregnancy. I'm like, great. What trainings have you done? They're like, I went to the lunch club a couple times. I'm like, okay, so nothing. You've done nothing. I took out extra loans to do these programs, which can also sound scary, but I think that it's a huge reason why I'm so successful in practice is going through these trainings so that you can have clinical certainty. So that's my take on that. But so I met Jeannie Ohm when I was in school. Told her that I wanted to do the program. She gave me some advice, when to start, when to get involved, and to get the full pediatric sort of certification. It's something like 15 or 16 seminars that some are online, some are in person. They're usually on the weekends. And then you do some research when you're in practice, you do some writing, some publications to their journal, and then you get certified. And I don't think the public actually cares that much about the certification, but it does build a lot of certainty when you're seeing these babies. So I think it's just one of the most brilliant trainings I've gone through. I've also studied a lot with Marty Rosen, who used to teach for the ICPA. Now he really does his own thing. And he teaches SOT cranial work, basically. So it's a lot of cranial adjusting, which is so magical for babies, especially for breastfeeding. And so I do a lot of oral work with babies where I put on a finger glove and I go inside their mouth and I assess their latch and I basically adjust their cranials from the inside of their mouth and from the outside as well. And it is like magic getting these babies to latch better and breastfeed better, which sets them up for a trajectory of health for life. Breastfeeding is one of the best things we can do for our babies. So I think as chiropractors, we have this really, really special little niche that we can focus on. And I've really become known as like the breastfeeding specialist in chiropractic, but especially in my town. And so that's what people come to us for. They don't come to us for low back pain or disc issues or sports injuries, which I think that's great too. But people bring their babies and they hand over their babies because they know this is going to help regardless of symptoms. They just know that this is what's good for their baby. So that's been the pathway for that.
Yeah, I think this is like a great opportunity for you to give us as much insight as possible to a student who may not be able to come and travel and see your office, although, you know, it might be worth it to them if what you're saying is ringing true to them and they want to hop on an airplane from the UK and fly over to
Right.
San Diego and see your practice. But if you could maybe give us as much of a detailed perspective on what it's like to be in your office, how you set it up, how you designed it, some of
Yeah,
the thought processes that went through creating the experience that you've been able to create.
absolutely. So I actually started. My in-laws are chiropractors. I married a guy who is not a chiropractor, but his parents are. And I actually started in their practice for my first couple years in practice. Um, I built up a patient base there. Basically, um, gained a good amount of a schedule, a full schedule, and then I started looking for my own space. And as soon as I found it kind of happened by chance, but I was driving down the road and a road that I didn't normally drive. And I, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this building and I saw a for lease sign that had fallen down. So it was sideways and it was all dark. And I literally like screeched into the driveway because I was like, oh, I got to see this space. Something was just calling me to do it. And so I parked and, parked so that my headlights were shining inside the window. And the place, quite frankly, was a shithole, but I saw it. I was like, I see what this can be. And this goes back, like, just side note, this goes back to like changing your way of thinking and realizing what's possible. Like that chiropractor that came in for lunch that day planted the seed that I could be a chiropractor. And I never thought it possible before that. Right. So like there's a quote in chiropractic, you never know how far reaching something you may think say or do today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And so to me, it was like something was calling me. I was able to see the vision of what this building could be. And I knew it was the place. I knew I had to have it. And then it happened, called the landlord, signed the lease. Other people were looking at it, but it was meant for me. So now what the practice looks like when you come in, it's a big open space. We have 4 tables. There are 4 of us chiropractors. Usually there's anywhere from 2 to 4 of us on at a time. And people come in. We've got a couch. We've got very cushy carpet. I do that on purpose so the babies can crawl. We are a shoes off practice also. So you come in, you take your shoes off, and it really feels like you're in a living room. And that was very intentional. I think your office is similar, right? It feels very cozy. It doesn't feel like a doctor's office. I actually don't even care if people call me Dr. Steph. I'm fine with just Steph because I'm not attached to that, I guess, ego part of it of like, I don't need to be your doctor. I'm your peer and I'm learning your body and I'm going to work with you. I'm not going to do something to you, right? It's very different sort of energy. So that's our style. And then whichever doctor is available gets the next person. So we work very much as a team, which actually works really well because sometimes like, I'm a mom of 2 and sometimes my brain is just so focused on like the person in front of me that when another doc is checking someone, maybe they'll see something through a different lens and find something. And, so it works really, really well working as a team. And it also allows for a nice work-life balance. So if I need to take a day off and go be with my kids, I don't often have to take sick days because my kids don't get sick very often. But if I want a day to, spend time with them, then the other docs cover. So it's a really cool setup here. It's really quite unique from other practices because a lot of practices, every doctor has their own set of patients and there's not a lot of overlap. So we do it a little bit differently here. And it's great. I love it. So especially, my husband is not a chiropractor and so, he can't cover for me. which is so nice to have a couple that are both chiropractors. But as a mom and, having a baby, needing time off, it's so great to have a team that can cover.
Yeah, both you and I were really blessed with some amazing mentors, and we just came up in a time where it just seemed like the resources were abundant and people were really passionate and connected to those resources and practicing outside of class and just going the extra mile. And now both you and I, we're enjoying the fruits of our labor. We're in practice, we're enjoying it. We have a great lifestyle, work-life balance, and we've been successful. You said something before, which was that it's really important to be successful as a chiropractor. And I think that we also, both you and I, have seen, because of the mentorship we receive, we need to also give back to that next generation. So I'm building things. I see you building things. I'm just curious, like as a creative question of maybe most of the students that I'm observing, and this is just me, limited observation, but are 95% in the curriculum and 5% extracurricular, where we might have been like 70-30, they're like 95-5. I'm just curious, like, how can they make the most of that 5%, or how can we stretch them to really see the importance of going and doing more, like you've touched on throughout this interview. But I'm just wondering if you could get creative and also maybe just speak to that chiropractic student that's in school right now that you're already in touch with, and just send them a message.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, sometimes I want to shake people and be like, just come on, you can do more. You can, just really dive in. And I, like you mentioned earlier, about like, what would you tell your younger self? And like, if I could do chiropractic school all over again, I would do it exactly as I did it. I wouldn't change a thing, because I really maximized it. I wish I would have taken every seminar available. I didn't. So maybe I would do that differently. But I think it's really important. Like, chiropractic school gets you your degree, and you'll get a great education, depending on which school you go to, of course. And it'll get you your license to practice, but it doesn't necessarily give you that heart and soul of chiropractic. And that we have to take personal responsibility for. Like, I love that Monday morning comes around and I'm like, oh, love it. I get to go to the office. I don't have that Monday, oh my God, it's Monday, it's going to be a long week. Like, I don't have that. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that comes to personal responsibility. There were lots of things that I could be like frustrated at the school for, like, oh, they didn't teach us enough business, and they didn't teach us enough this, and they didn't teach us enough that. Well, sometimes you have to go out and find it. And a lot of things, you can't learn in chiropractic school until you're actually in practice doing it for yourself. And so, life itself is a learning lesson. And chiropractic school is, a great time, but there's also more to it. So I don't think, and I do think, like you said, like, I think it is our responsibility to be successful as chiropractors, right? Like, one, we should get rewarded for what we do, and be paid well, because we have a huge heart for service. And I'm certainly an office that I think I have very affordable fees. But I do work really hard and take care of my employees and my team. And I truly look at them as a team. And I think that, as we have the opportunity to be successful and then to also give back. And that goes back to like that first interaction with Reggie Gold, where he was so generous and gave me this gift, and I was like, I'll never forget that. And I'm going to carry that through to my practice.
When we were in school, the wave was just beginning, and Reggie Gold was speaking on the second day when they did TikTok style or TED Talk style. And he said the crown jewel, or like when he looks at his career, his biggest crowning achievement was that he sent 150 something people to chiropractic school. And it just gave me like reinforcement that, wow, this project I've been working on all through school and I'm still working on to this day. Here we are 10 years, 12 years later, since I've been interested in this pre-chiropractic program. I'm just curious, like, if you can kind of see that vision of what having an established pre-chiropractic program around the world would mean to the profession as far as bringing people in for the right reasons, people showing up at school with focuses on what type of chiropractor they want to become one day maybe, or having a couple options. And just what if we brought 150,000 chiropractors in? Because you and I can both agree, like, if people knew this was possible for them, they would be like, maybe not running in this direction, but they would be like, that's one of my top 2 or 3 options. And this is just a side note. Yesterday, I was doing a little bit of funny research on TikTok. I don't really have a TikTok, but if you search hashtag chiropractor, there's been 18.1 billion views. If you search hashtag medical, there's been 17.9 billion views. If you search hashtag pre-med, there's been 3.1 million views. If you search hashtag pre-chiro, there's been 300 views. So there's a real incongruency with our profession's ability to make this pathway a viable option. And I'm just curious, like, that's wild. Like, we're actually bigger than medical as a hashtag, but yet we're like non-existent when it comes to actually becoming one of who we are.
Right. Yeah, that is really interesting. Those are really interesting numbers. And I think social media is such a great tool. I'm not really on TikTok either, but I'm on Instagram quite a bit. And I think that, you know, I had a friend patient a couple years ago, and she was like, Steph, you are my go-to for like all things pregnancy and kids and babies. She's like, why don't you start a YouTube or like put this on Instagram or something, like get the message out there? And I was like, no, like Instagram, social media is such a distraction. Like, I'm just focused on building the practice. And she really encouraged me. She was like, this is a tool to build your practice. And I was like, all right, you're right. And I think if BJ Palmer were alive today, he would be all over social media, right? Because it's such a great tool. So I really use social media as a tool to get the message out about chiropractic. And I think that I love this project that you're doing, because if we can build a group of people who are so passionate about chiropractic and so interested in it and get them to chiropractic school, it will change the world, right? It will completely change the world. If we flooded chiropractic schools to the point where there was a waiting list to get in, could you imagine? We could open more locations, train more chiropractors to serve more people, which will go out into the world and serve more people. I mean, that's how it should be, right? Like, everybody's talking about nervous system regulation these days. Like, everyone in every profession is talking about regulate your nervous system. But nobody's actually talking about how to do that. And that's what chiropractic has always been about, is making the nervous system more adaptable. That's what we've always been about, always. And so, you know, if we can have more people getting that message out, the world will literally change.
And maybe just touch on like what you think could be in a I'm going to just tease apart the pre-chiropractic program, and maybe you could just rapid fire, spend 30 seconds telling me what you think would be cool about it. And just, I'll preface it by saying that the 4th stage of pre-chiropractic is start your own pre-chiropractic club, introduce it to the guidance counselors and teachers and administrators in your college campus, to the other clubs that are health related, and establish that presence as if it was your own practice, like going and meeting people and communicating with them. So that's the 4th stage. But like, the 1st stage is like the foundations, what it is, why it's important, who becomes chiropractors, like what it looks like. The 2nd stage is the skill set. So I broke innate up into your inner state, your inner scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur. So science, philosophy, art, business, communication. And then the 3rd stage is the apprenticeship. So they're going to your practice and they're having structured observations where like they have a purpose for why they're coming to your practice. So I'll just touch on those first 3 or even 4, and just maybe get some feedback from you of like, how could that really be tied in maybe with the chiropractic schools, with local chiropractic offices? How can our chiropractic networks support these students that are going through these types of programs? You know what I mean? Because there's there's a need for there to be like a mentorship at every single stage of the pre-chiropractic, because it shifts like what their needs are and what their awarenesses are and what their abilities are. So anyway, I just turn it back to you after sharing that with you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a good idea. And I think, you know, I think a great piece of that is the shadowing of other offices and like going and seeing how people do it. I remember when I was in school, I went and I visited one of my sorority sisters who was in practice doing really well, Michelle Arrieta, and she had a beautiful practice in Petaluma. She's since moved to the Sacramento area. And she let me come in and shadow. And the building that she was in was an old converted barn house. And it was so beautiful and like rustic and like these beautiful stairs and woodwork everywhere. And I thought all chiropractors were supposed to be in strip malls. I thought that's what you do. You go to a strip mall, you rent a space, and that is what it looks like for everyone. So even just seeing her practice, I saw, again, what's possible. Like you just don't know until you don't know what you don't know. And so seeing these possibilities really helped shape my time in chiropractic school. And so I think the shadowing piece of it is huge. I think also like as a pre-chiropractic student, learning the philosophy, that was a huge piece for me because I went into chiropractic school with a pretty good understanding. Still so much more to learn. I was so fresh and just a little sponge waiting to soak everything up. But going into it with a foundational understanding of what the philosophy was or is. And that really like helped me filter through and sort through where I wanted to focus in school.
And then the fifth stage is an independent capstone study, like a capstone project. So it could be a term paper, it could be one of those tri-boards, and we do little pre-chiro fairs, science fairs. I'm just curious if you have any creative prompts that come to mind of like, if you had an intern and you were like, hey, you got 3 to 6 months, you're going to be hanging out around the office, you're going to be studying chiropractic philosophy, like, how do you get it to be like maybe applicable to social media or to the real world or to their college campus or high school campus?
That's a good question. Wow, I don't know. I think there are so many possibilities. I mean, if I had someone in my practice who was in that role, I would probably get them really studying things more pertaining to birth and babies and like the first subluxation, which Genome always talked about the first subluxation occurring at birth. My good friend Jen Santos, who is now teaching dynamic body balancing all over the world, which is a kind of a birth focused set of techniques. She talks about the first subluxation happening in the womb. And so I would really encourage someone to, you know, make that their area of focus, just because that's my area of focus. But I think it's really important for the profession too. Like, how does a subluxation occur? When does it occur? When is the highest likelihood that it occurs? You know, for me, that's in pregnancy and in labor. So that's where I would focus someone. And maybe
Go ahead, you got something else?
Well, I was going to say, and maybe even like expanding that to an area where maybe you're not as focused, you know, like just again to see those possibilities. Like maybe I would send someone down if they're really interested in pediatrics, go learn about sports injuries, right? And how chiropractic plays into that, just so that you know, right? And have a nice broad understanding of what chiropractic is.
Yeah, and you actually kind of struck a chord there with the whole first subluxation happening in the womb and during labor. I know that it's unfair to say that we can metaphor labor to the 3.5 to 4 years of chiropractic school, but the preconception is like pre-chiropractic, and like now you're in the womb, and that's like, to me, like the combo of pre-chiropractic and chiropractic school. But labor is like truly the end of chiropractic school and maybe the beginning of being a professional chiropractor. But how incongruent are we if we're not really pouring resources and efforts into creating a better structure so we could have a better function in those preconception, those pre-chiropractic years? I'm just curious
Oh,
what your thoughts are on that metaphor.
this is a beautiful metaphor. I love it so much. And I think Jen Santos actually gave a talk with this exact metaphor also. I think so. If you haven't interviewed her, you should interview her. But I think that's beautiful because I know so many people who went to chiropractic school because they didn't get into med school or they didn't get into dental school, or it was just the next doctor title that they could acquire. And I think that's actually quite I don't want to say dangerous because it's not dangerous in the sense of it's unsafe, but um,
It's limiting their potential. They're not going to reach their
exactly.
potential if they're using it as a fallback option
Yeah.
instead of like, I'm very pointed and laser sharp focused, you know?
Yes, exactly. I think it's very limiting. And I think, if someone's going into chiropractic school thinking chiropractic is a treatment for X, Y, or Z, that's also very limiting, right? Chiropractic is all about expanding someone's own potential, right? Reconnecting them not only to their self, but to source. And I think that, like, if we limit it to this narrow scope of like, it's only for treatment of back pain or headaches or whatever, or disc issues, like, to me that's really boring. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Just curious, we've heard since early days of our chiropractic student years from one of our mentors, Arno Bernier, that a parallel curriculum is necessary. A lot of what I'm trying to build is like this parallel curriculum. What do you think a good parallel curriculum for a practicing chiropractor such as yourself or myself, 10 years in, maybe we'll call it professional engagement? What are some good projects or some good prompts that could really help us expand ourselves at this stage of the game?
Oh, great question. I love this. Okay, so one, I would say, like, always have green books around, right? Like, always be studying the green books, going back to our foundation, our philosophy. um, I also think it's really, really important or helpful and helps build your practice if you study everything about your target market, right? Like, I my target market is pregnant moms, or moms with multiple children. That's my jam. So, like, to me, I'm constantly researching stuff around those people, right? Like, where do those people congregate? Where do they shop? What kind of products are they being marketed to? You know what I mean? Like, I have so many people that ask me, like, what's the best baby carrier? And I'm like, well, let me use one, the chiropractic philosophy as a filter to look at that. And two, let's use chiropractic as which one of these is best for baby's development. So, like, that's the kind of thing I like to teach people a lot, is not necessarily what to buy, but how to think about what to buy. Right. So really learning, like, what is this mom going to be faced with, and not necessarily so that I can have all the answers, but I can help be a guide. And that is really part of what has built my practice, is people look at me as like the go-to person to help guide them through pregnancy and parenthood. And so I think, if you want to specialize in sports, then, like, it makes no sense if you know nothing about sports. Right? Someone who, like, my brother-in-law is a chiropractor. He's an amazing golfer. Amazing golfer. If I try to specialize in golf and I don't know the difference between a putter and I don't even know the difference. The other clubs, right? Like, I would sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, and I wouldn't gain the trust of those people. So I think that's a big thing. Like, really identify the people that you do your best work with, and then research everything about them so that you can
I
connect.
love that. I love that. Thank you for that. This is just kind of a selfish question, but I have a 2.5-year-old son, and technology, like, we're always outside, but when we go inside, technology becomes like an awareness now that he has and he wants. Obviously, you've got people coming in and talking to you about how technology is impacting the brain and how we need to build a strong brain for our kids in this generation. So I'm just curious, what are some creative strategies that you're giving to parents to help them adapt to the technological overload of being around toddlers that get addicted immediately?
Yeah, yeah. And I will say we certainly do more TV in the house than I would like to admit. But I think that 100% starts with us. And I'm not saying starts with us in a sense of like, well, I like to watch TV, so my kids are going to watch TV. I mean it in a sense of like, it starts with like connecting ourselves to the earth, right? Like, there is an app for everything. There's an app for tracking your cycle. What if you didn't need an app to track your cycle? What if you were so connected to the earth and the moon and yourself that you didn't need an app? What if you could palpate your own cervix and know exactly where you were on your cycle? What if you didn't need to look at a screen to know what your body was doing, to know if you're ovulating or not? What if we didn't need an app to calculate our contractions and when it's time to go to the hospital or call the midwife? What if we didn't need to time all of that and press start on the timer? What if we didn't have a doctor or a midwife tell us how dilated we were and when it was ready to push? What if we actually connected to our body and trusted and pushed when it was ready to push, right? What if we didn't need a scale to weigh our babies? We just know they feel like this, they're latching, they're gulping. We don't need to weigh them every 5 minutes to know how they're developing. We don't need to measure everything. What if we were connected enough that we knew if they were safe or not? Right? What if we didn't need an ultrasound to measure baby? What if we didn't need all these technological advances that haven't actually improved clinical outcomes? What if we were so much more connected to the process than having to rely on these external things to validate our own experience? Right? So that's where I think it starts. And I don't think, a screen here or there is going to completely damage a child's brain. But if we start there and we start with reconnecting to ourselves through the process, then that screen's not going to be tempting, for ourselves as it would be for our kids.
I think this is a perfect segue for us to kind of wrap it up with this final question by asking you sort of what your vision is on how you maybe aim to affect the lives of millions of people through an innovation or an invention or an adaptive strategy. Obviously, you're doing so, and even though you may take care of a couple hundred people actively right now, they're touching thousands of people. But I'm just talking about like the world, the global. As a chiropractor, we have these awarenesses that really apply to every human being. It's not just the people in our community. So we have to start thinking bigger, because obviously the world really needs us. They need what you just described right there. So if you could maybe just share with us anything that comes to mind around what's possible in this lifetime, or maybe not in this lifetime, but what you want to contribute to.
Oh, I love it. Well, I first of all just feel honored to even be asked to be part of that conversation. So I feel very like, wow, I can't believe that I get to be a part of this, bigger conversation. And I really, what I would like to see is more chiropractic colleges with a very solid foundational understanding of the chiropractic philosophy, so that we can train more chiropractors to have these, beautiful practices full of people that is just abundance everywhere for everyone. So that's, I guess, my vision, and my goal is just to try and help encourage and support people as much as I can on that journey.
Thank you so much for sharing with the students today. We will link to you and connect anybody who wants to you in the future. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. You're amazing for doing this.